How do you deal with the boss who's a jerk or at least not getting it?
The more we give, the more it inspires others to give. But the more selfish we are, the more others become selfish around us. And so those are organizations in which selfish behavior prevails. And so we see the residual effect, which is they make decisions that ultimately screw us. They destroy our economy because of their selfish behavior, right? We know this is what happens. Same in politics, right? And the answer is, don't worry about it. I know it sounds silly. And I mean, your first question is, do I talk about these things to them? I will talk to anyone who will listen. You know? But I don't talk to people who don't want to listen. The good news is there are some good eggs. And there are some of them who've had conversions, where they were the bastards who believed in firing people and screwing people to advance their careers, and something happens. I just met a guy recently who was a very senior executive at a very, very large company, and something happened, and he got like hit in the head or something, and he realized, holy cow, I have to look after people, right? And they become obsessed with it, and they start sticking their necks out. And we just need those champions scattered around. And this is what I do. The more I spread this message, the more it's kind of like, you know, in the cartoons, sort of the whole of justice, you know, the message goes out and they all sort of like, you know, wherever they are, like, you know, they poke their heads up. It's that kind of thing. The more we talk about it, the more we put it in our work, you know, because don't forget, you're going to help someone who goes home feeling good and their husband or their wife works in the bank. And they're going to talk how much about they love to, and that might inspire that person. You know, it has all of these residual impacts that we don't really know. This is the funny thing about the internet, which is we're so proud of the internet that we can measure everything. No, you can't. You can only measure one layer, right? So for example, you say, Simon, what's the impact you're having? I don't know is the answer, right? I know I know that it'll take more than a week and I know it'll take 7 years, but I don't know when it's going to happen and I don't know how it's going to get there, right? All I can do is do it. Right? But I have no clue how or when. And so, for example, I can measure book sales and I can measure how many hits and I can measure how many people have watched a TED Talk and all of this. But I can't measure, you know, that TED Talk being shown to a room of 50 people and one of those 50 people doesn't buy a book, doesn't watch a TED Talk, doesn't do anything, but goes out and does something good for somebody else. I have no way of measuring that. And so we're so proud of the internet and its ability to measure everything, but we're measuring one layer where we used to measure no layers. It's like, you know, this is how people work. It's gossamer, you know, it's networked. And so the answer is don't worry about them. Don't worry about them. Worry about the people who you can care for, who you can give to, and when we reach a critical mass in society, it will tip, right? And if you don't believe me, the reason it is the way it is now is because it tipped the wrong way. There was no such thing as massive layoffs as business strategy prior to in the 1980s. It just wasn't done. It was done here and there, but it wasn't strategy. The idea of using layoffs to balance the books is a relatively new phenomenon that came for the increase of selfishness in the Gordon Gekko greed is good 1980s boom, right? This was also the same exact period, the 1980s, where the theory of shareholder value was put forwards. Right? Because they had all of these people buying large companies and installing professional managers to run the companies that they bought, that they invested in, and they had a problem, which is those professional managers were paid for by the company, and those professional managers cared for the employees and the customers. And so the investors said, how do we protect our investments? We've got an idea. We're going to give them equity in the company and bonus them based on the performance, right? And so the shift happened where the CEOs started caring more about the investors and stopped caring about the customers and the employees. Those were theories introduced by some Harvard professor in the 1980s. We can push it back the other way, right? We can push it back the other way. But we just have to, and there's just just the other day, which company was it? One of the large banks where the shareholder, Citibank. Yeah, Citibank. The shareholders voted, majority shareholders voted against a fat pay package. That's unprecedented. It has never happened, even in hard times, even when the company's doing this, the shareholders it's just sort of a cursory thing where they approve the $15 million bonus for the CEO. They voted against it. It's non-binding, but it sends a shot across the bow saying shareholders now want you to be bonused if you do something good for others. Even if the others is us. All right? The point is that it's starting to crack. And so let's just stick our finger in the crack. You know? Make sure that it keeps cracking. It swung one way, we can swing it back.